You wake up and you're tired. Not, I didn't get enough sleep tired. Not even it's been a long week tired. It's deeper. It's existential. It's the kind of exhaustion that sits behind your eyes even after a vacation. It's the kind of fatigue you can't cure with coffee or sleep. And the scariest part, you can't quite explain why you feel this way. You're not being chased. You're not in a war zone. You're not starving. In fact, you might be achieving more than ever, but you're still exhausted. Why? Byung Chul Han has an answer, and once you hear it, you'll never see modern life the same way again. Han is a Korean-German philosopher who doesn't shout. He doesn't go viral. He doesn't try to be popular. But his words cut through the noise of modern life like a scalpel. He says we are not living in an age of oppression. We are living in an age of overachievement. And that, he argues, is killing us quietly, invisibly, and with our full cooperation.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Han is a Korean-German philosopher who doesn't shout. He doesn't go viral. He doesn't try to be popular. But his words cut through the noise of modern life like a scalpel. He says we are not living in an age of oppression. We are living in an age of overachievement. And that, he argues, is killing us quietly, invisibly, and with our full cooperation. Let me ask you something. When's the last time you did nothing, without guilt? Not scrolling, not multitasking, not resting so you could be more productive later. Just being. If that feels alien to you, you're not alone. Han says we've internalized the logic of capitalism so deeply that we don't even need bosses anymore. We've become our own masters, whipping ourselves to perform, to optimize, to hustle. It's no longer you must. It's I should. We have become, in Han's words, achievement subjects. And the enemy is no longer someone else. It's us. This is where the exhaustion begins. We are no longer oppressed by external forces. We are suffocating under the weight of our own freedom. Sounds like a contradiction, right? But think about it. You're told you can be anything. You can achieve anything. You just have to hustle harder. So what do? We build personal brands. We track our sleep. We compete for attention online. We optimize every second, every breath, every thought. And then we wonder why we're always tired, why we feel burned out, even when we're winning. Han calls this the burnout society. And here's the twist. Burnout today is not caused by working too hard under someone else's command. It comes from working endlessly under your own. You become both the prisoner and the warden. You exploit yourself, and you call it freedom. Let that sink in. What if your exhaustion isn't a flaw in you but a symptom of the system you've absorbed? What if your tiredness is not laziness but rebellion? A quiet plea from your body saying, stop treating yourself like a machine. Han says we've replaced ritual with routine. We've replaced contemplation with content. We've replaced being with doing. And in that shift, we've lost something sacred. We've lost silence. Real silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of demand. A space where you are not expected to produce, post, improve, or respond. Just exist. But who has time for that? Every app you open, every notification you receive, Every metric you track is screaming one thing: you are not enough yet. And so we run faster. We read productivity hacks. We listen to motivational podcasts at 2x speed. We turn even meditation into a performance. But the more we do, the more we fracture. The more we optimize, the more empty we feel. Because deep down we know we were not made for endless acceleration. Han says we are now tired from the inside, not because we lack energy, but because we lack meaning. And meaning doesn't come from more clicks, more likes, more hustle. It comes from depth, from stillness, from connection. But depth takes time, and we're too busy to slow down. Here's the philosophical bomb Han drops. We confuse positivity with health. We think that saying yes to everything, opportunities, goals, connections, is a sign of life. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say no. No to the endless demands. No to the pressure to always be visible. No to the constant need to update the world on who you are. Because the moment you stop performing, you might actually start being. Have you ever noticed how your soul feels most alive in moments of genuine slowness? Watching the wind move through trees, hearing your child laugh, losing track of time in a conversation. There's no metric for that, no algorithm, no way to monetize it. And yet, those moments feel more real than anything you posted this week. Why? Because they are unmeasured, unoptimized. They are free. But here's the trap. The system doesn't want you to value those moments, because they can't be sold back to you. So it convinces you that rest is laziness, that silence is unproductive, that being offline means being irrelevant. And we believe it. We internalize it. We become addicted to visibility, addicted to affirmation, addicted to proving we're alive by showing we're busy. Han says modern life has become a mirror. We don't look out at the world. We look at ourselves, reflected back through screens, metrics, and audience reactions. We become our own spectators. We perform, not for others, but for the version of ourselves we think we should be. And that, he argues, is not freedom. That's a new kind of slavery, one where the chains are invisible because we wear them as ambition. So what's the way out? Han doesn't give us easy answers. He doesn't believe in hacks. He believes in aesthetic resistance. That means resisting not through rebellion, but through beauty, through slowness, through presence, through creating spaces, both physical and mental, where we can breathe again. Spaces where we don't have to be on, where we don't have to share, where we are not a brand but a being. It's not about doing nothing, it's about doing differently, about doing what nourishes, not what performs. It's about asking, what do I do because it's true, and what do I do because I'm afraid I'll disappear if I don't? This is the real danger Han warns us about. Not burnout, not fatigue, but erasure, the erasure of depth, of contemplation, of the soul. We are becoming flatter, faster, more reactive, less reflective. And the question is, how long can we live like this before we forget what it means to live at all? You feel it, don't you? That ache. That subtle knowing that something's off. And that modern life, for all its speed and connectivity, is draining something essential from you. That your exhaustion isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's your body, your mind, your spirit saying, there is another way. Han doesn't shout it. He whispers it in essays, in meditations, and quiet provocations like the complaint of the depressive individual, nothing is possible, can only occur in a society that thinks nothing is impossible. In other words, when everything becomes possible, when you are told you can always do more, be more, post more, you collapse. Because you were not made for infinite possibility. You were made for purpose. And purpose requires limits, boundaries, silence, rest, reflection. Purpose asks not what more can I do, but what is worth doing. So here's the invitation: stop, breathe, reflect. Not to be more productive, but to remember who you are when you're not performing. Who are you when you are not being watched? Who are you when there is no algorithm to impress? That's the question Han would leave us with. Not how can I do more, but what if I've already done enough? We exist now in a world without edges, without endings, without pause. We wake to screens, we fall asleep to screens, and somewhere in between, we forget to inhabit our own lives. The internet doesn't end. Social media doesn't end. Notifications don't end. And so, neither do we. We've become like monks in a digital monastery, but not the kind that nurtures silence and contemplation. No, we've entered a monastery of constant noise. A monastery where the rituals are likes, the prayers are posts, and the gods we worship are algorithms. Byung Chul Han calls this the age of digital transparency, but it's not clarity that transparency brings, its exposure, constant, unrelenting exposure. We show ourselves, not to reveal our souls, but to stay visible. Because to disappear, even for a moment, feels like death. But what if the real death is this endless visibility? What if in always being seen, we've forgotten how to see? What if we've traded real presence for performative presence, and in doing so, we've lost the very thing that made us human, our ability to dwell in silence, to reflect, but to be alone without being lonely? Han writes about how the digital age has destroyed negativity. That may sound like a good thing after all. Who wants negativity? But he means something deeper. In philosophy, negativity isn't just about bad vibes, it's about limits. It's about no. It's about the resistance that gives shape to meaning. Without negativity, everything is flattened into sameness. We're told to say yes to everything, to hustle, to share, to collaborate, to innovate. But without the ability to say no, to withdraw, to withhold, we lose all contrast. And without contrast, there is no depth. Everything becomes surface. Everything becomes content. Even you become content. So ask yourself, when was the last time you did something that wasn't shared, published, or turned into a performance? When was the last time you had a thought you didn't tweet, a moment you didn't capture, a smile that wasn't posted? We don't even own our experiences anymore, we rent them to the internet for validation. And in doing so, we exhaust ourselves not just physically, but metaphysically. This exhaustion isn't just burnout, it's spiritual erosion. Han says we've entered a state of hyper-attention, where our minds are constantly scanning for the next thing, the next update, the next dopamine hit. But this hyper-attention comes at a cost. We lose the ability for deep attention. The kind of attention that allows us to read slowly, to think deeply, to reflect meaningfully. We skim, we scroll, we swipe, but we don't stay. And staying is where meaning is born. It's where relationships deepen. It's where the soul stretches out and says, I'm here. But how can the soul stretch when every second is optimized, monetized, and analyzed? How can we be present when presence itself has been turned into a performance? Han mourns the loss of the vita contemplativa, the contemplative life. He believes we've banished contemplation from the world and replaced it with multitasking. And this, he argues, is not just a technological shift, it's a civilizational crisis. What happens to a society that forgets how to be still? What happens to a culture that no longer values slowness, silence, solitude? You get what we have now, a civilization that is always on, always visible, always exhausted. A civilization that confuses being busy with being alive. A civilization that cannot pause without guilt. And here's the tragedy: most of us don't even know we're trapped, because the prison is beautiful. It's efficient, it's sleek, it fits in your pocket, and it tells you you're free. But freedom without the ability to disconnect is not freedom. It's just a new kind of dependence, one that dresses itself up as empowerment. So again, we must ask, what does it mean to be free in a world that rewards constant exposure? What does it mean to be human in a system that commodifies every thought, every glance, every moment of attention? Han's answer is radical in its simplicity: reclaim the negative. Reclaim the empty space. Reclaim the right to not respond, not react, not produce. Reclaim the dignity of silence. Reclaim the sacredness of boredom. Because boredom is not the enemy, it's the doorway. The doorway to depth. The doorway to creativity. The doorway to meaning. But we've become so allergic to boredom that we fill every gap with noise, every silence with sound, every pause with scrolling. We've lost the ability to dwell, and Han says dwelling is the very essence of being human. To dwell is to inhabit a moment fully, not to pass through it, not to broadcast it, but to be in it fully, quietly, deeply. So what would it look like to reclaim that ability? What would it look like to create a digital monastery, not one of noise and performance, but one of reflection and restraint? It doesn't mean abandoning technology. It means using it without being used by it. It means choosing when to be visible and when to be invisible. It means understanding that the most powerful statements are often made not by saying more, but by saying nothing. Silence in this age is not emptiness, it's resistance. It's rebellion. It's the refusal to be turned into content. It's the refusal to let your inner life be flattened into a feed. And maybe that's the real revolution Han is pointing us toward, not a revolution of action, but of inaction. A revolution of stillness. A revolution of saying no. A no to the constant demand for productivity. A no to the endless pressure to be seen. No to the illusion that more is better. Because sometimes the most radical thing you can do is log off. Not forever, but long enough to remember who you are when no one is watching. Long enough to feel your own thoughts again. Long enough to sit in the quiet and say, this is enough. I am enough. So the next time you feel that deep, unnameable exhaustion, the kind that sleep doesn't fix, don't reach for another stimulant. Don't open another app. Don't look for the next productivity hack. Instead, stop, breathe, turn inward, go into the monastery of your own solitude. Not to escape the world, but to recover the strength it takes to return to it whole. Because in that silence you might find something the world has tried to take from you, yourself.